Every CEO says the same thing. My sales team just isn't performing. But what if it's not your team that's broken? What if it's you? Today's guest, Wesleyne Whittaker, has helped companies rewrite that story. She's taken teams that barely hit 75% of their quota and turned them into 136% success stories. Not by replacing people, not by necessarily implementing AI, not by following something that's on trend, but just by making subtle tweaks to the strategy. She's built the belief selling framework, a system that shows leaders how to fix what's really broken, the process, the mindset, and the leadership behind every sale. In this episode, you'll learn why sales numbers lie, how to turn chaos into clarity, and the leadership blueprint that can turn an underperforming team into a record-breaking one. If you've ever wondered why your sales results never match your effort, stay till the end of this episode. This conversation might be the small thing that saves your business. Wesleyne, welcome to MyFinJourney.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here with you today.
No, it's my pleasure. Before we dive right in, I know you're in the process of a soft release for your book. So I wanted to maybe start there. Help us understand your journey, what led you to write a book, how you wrote it in 5 days apparently, and why it's so amazing that everyone should try to join the pre-sale before it's all sold out.
Yes. So I have been wanting to write a book for years. I'm an avid reader and kept reading books and I'm like, I should write my own book. And so for me, the process of what book should I write first, it was so heavy on me. And I firmly believe in investing in yourself. If you want to do something great, like you have to invest in yourself. So I hired a book coach. And when we started the process, I understood how to actually write a book, like start with the outline, pull the stories, do all these things. And so on December 26th, 2024, I sat down and I said, I'm going to start writing this book. And literally 5 days later, I had the first draft of my book. It was absolutely amazing. And it came out so quickly and so fast because it culminates my 15-year journey in sales, in leadership, and being a chemist in the lab. And so this book is not just a book on how to sell better or how to sell more. It really talks about overcoming those mindset barriers, overcoming those heavy things that we don't even realize hold us back in sales, and also giving you the framework, like we need to do competitive analysis if we're going to actually sell to somebody. We need to know what our competitors are doing. So it's a wonderful book of mindset and skill set all packed in one.
I love it, Wesleyne. So a couple of things that come to mind. Number one, I'm dyslexic, so I'm not necessarily looking to read a book. That's why Audible is the perfect solution. So is it on Audible or will it be on Audible?
It will be on Audible, but not when it's released. It won't be on Audible for a couple more months.
Okay, awesome. Well, we'll all look forward to that. Number two is like we live in a society of instant gratification. It's nice to not have to like put in the work, etc. So if you were to give the Cliff Notes version or the ChatGPT summary of the book, kind of help us understand, your journey over the last 15 years in maybe a minute or two. That way, as people go through the episode, they can really understand how you got to be as good as you are in sales.
Awesome. Ooh, 90 seconds. Okay. So I am a recovering chemist. I started my career in the petrochemical industry. And after a few years in the petrochemical industry, working behind the bench, I was a failure analysis chemist. So I had to figure out why these plastic parts were breaking. I found myself in sales. And I say, when I got into sales, I finally figured out what I wanted to be when I grew up because I loved everything about it. So my first sales job, I was actually selling to people like me, people who are doing failure analysis in the lab. So it was a really easy step for me into sales because I already spoke the language. And then I was really, really good at sales. So I made a quick ascent into international sales leadership. And when I became an international sales leader, I fell flat on my face. People were leaving. We were not hitting our numbers. It was really bad. And so I had to figure out how not to just sell, but how to impact my team, how to ensure that everybody on the team hit their numbers. And I figured that out. And once I figured that out, 7 years ago, I started my business, Transform Sales. And that's what I do every day in the business. And so all of those different experiences I have had, being a chemist, being a salesperson, being a sales leader, and then owning my own business and training thousands upon thousands of salespeople, I know it works. I know that there's so much tactical training out there. Like there are a gazillion people who will teach you how to cold call. There are a gazillion people who will teach you how to do a discovery meeting. But if you don't fix all of the noise in your brain first, none of that ever works. So I really wanted to give people a guide to help them overcome some of those self-limiting beliefs, some of the, I call it mental spaghetti, and also teach them step by step how to do the things. And you mentioned being dyslexic. Um, a big inspiration for the work that I do is my youngest son. He is also dyslexic. And so one of the things that I've learned from him is the way the dyslexic brain works is you guys need to understand the origins of things. You need to understand like this, oh, this Greek and Latin root word. Okay, when I see this letter and that letter, this goes together. So in my book is built, it is written for anyone to understand it. Like you can take these tools and you can go implement them very, very quickly because I'm actually holding your hand through the process. And if you're a high level salesperson, you're like, I don't need this. I already know how to do all these things. You will still find something in here that you didn't know before.
Wesleyne, that was so powerful. And I'm taking notes as we talk, and I hope you don't mind,
Please do.
just because I find it more enjoyable and higher yield for the value of the podcast. But what if I told you, Wesleyne, that I knew your son was dyslexic? Would you believe me? How would you react on that, just piece of information?
I would believe you because I talk about my child often.
Okay.
I do,
Okay.
and
So
I never post it.
So I'll answer that. So I didn't know that your child is dyslexic, but I want to mention this just for the audience because for me and how I sell, it's really important. I think it's really important to actively listen and engage in the conversation and actively listen and hear to the person you're speaking to. So it's like I said something I said in passing, like it's no big deal. You picked up on it non-verbally. There was like a reaction. And then later on in the conversation, you brought it up, and it's a powerful connecting piece. So I want to kind of use that, and I'm dropping that as like, advice for anyone on the listening to this who's trying to improve their sales process. But, from a deeper perspective, you answered the question I feel like a lot of people are asking, how do I get better at sales? But you gave the most annoying answer. Fixing the noise is the one thing that it's the one product I think people don't sell enough of and they don't have access to, and it's probably the most annoying one because it's something you can't see. It's something that you can't track in your numbers. It's like with cold calling, you can track the number of calls you make. You can track the response. You can track like what changes you're making. But when you say fundamentally you have to fix your thought process, first of all, it's not easy to say nicely. So I'm curious to see how you say it. And it's hard for people to actually quantify. So if you don't mind, Wesleyne, walk us through the sales process as you imagine it.
Ooh, the sales process as I imagine it. This is a great question. I'm having a debate with one of my clients currently on what it means, the sales process means. So, when I think about the sales process, I really think about starting very much at the beginning where we have a marketing qualified lead, right? And so, a marketing qualified lead is somebody who's expressing some kind of interest in what we are offering. They fit our ideal client profile, but they may not be in the buying cycle yet. Then we move to a sales qualified lead when that person says, yes, I'm interested, I have money, or I have a problem, or I need help. They become a sales qualified lead. And after they become a sales qualified lead, this is where the sales process differs based on what you're selling. So going from a sales qualified lead, a lot of times people are then calling them a prospect. And what we're doing in that prospecting stage is we are nurturing them, we are warming them up, we are getting them to the place where we're able to get on a discovery call. Once we have the discovery call, again, depending on the length of your sales cycle, if you're selling something that is not a high ticket item, so less than a couple $100s, you might just have one call. If you're selling something that is hundreds of thousands of dollars, that's going to be 4, 5, 6 calls, maybe 6 months. So the middle of that process is really dependent on how complex your sale is and how many people have to be involved to make a decision. And once we get all the stakeholders on board to make the decision, then we move into what I call that proposal stage. And so in the proposal stage, this is where we present the proposal to the stakeholders, and then we actually deliver, the contract, the documentation, and we're working through the negotiation. And then finally, we're moving to the close. And that's when we close the first deal, because most people, or you should have more than one offer, right? So you close the first deal. And I say when you close that deal, that's when your relationship is actually beginning, because there should be a cycle of upsell and cross-selling and all the things going on afterwards.
I love that, Wesleyne. So now I'm going to ask you to give me the answer again, but at a fifth grade level. You mentioned ICP, you mentioned
Oh, I
related
use
to
my
avatar.
jargon.
Yeah, yeah. All of this jargon makes sense to me. Like I didn't
Yeah.
give you my background. I studied genetics. I went to medical school. I joined big pharma in pharmacovigilance, drug safety. Very early on, I realized that like people don't understand how money works. So I'm going to focus on understanding how money works so that I can teach people how money works so that people don't need to worry about money, to founding my own real estate investment firm, to making people money, to now like launching this platform which just educates people on thinking about money. Along that process, you learn things like ICP and avatar, and you're just like, everyone wants to make money. It's
Yeah.
not that deep. Everyone
Yeah.
needs to understand how money works. My avatar is everybody. And then you transition to understanding, no, you need to be hyper specific, you need to be hyper clear, etc. So Wesleyne, when you talk to, first of all, who's your average client? Help us understand who your avatar is. Who are you trying to help?
So I help organizations that typically have long sales cycles, or there are, I would say, hundreds of thousands of dollars involved in their sales. The organizations that I work with typically have what I call field salespeople. So those are people who have to leave their house to sell. And being a little bit more specific, tuning in, I work with technical type companies. So manufacturing, distribution, pharma kind of companies. So anywhere there is, I like to say, a lot of times they're really fancy products that people don't understand how to sell and break down so that their clients understand. So
I love
that's
it.
my ideal client.
I love it. So let's say like pharmaceutical, drug rep would be a client of yours. Would it be the
Yeah.
company or the individual?
It kind of depends. So with my book, I'm really trying to target the individual just because I don't feel like there's great support for just individual salespeople in these types of fields. There is not community. They don't have the tools they need. Currently in my business, though, I typically work with the organizations. They bring me in to train the teams. I work with the leadership. I build a strategy.
Okay. So when you're building the strategy for the leadership, is it one to one with the leadership, or is the leadership bringing you in to like speak at like a conference or a 1 day event where it's one to many,
It's so
or
many
both?
different options. It's sometimes I'm brought in to do a keynote speech. Sometimes I am brought in to do leadership development training. Sometimes I'm doing sales training. Sometimes I'm doing like executive communication strategy. It just really depends on what the organization needs.
Understood. Understood. So if you were looking at it and you were saying, hey, they probably have mindset barriers. Hey, I need to fix this spaghetti situation. I need to fix the noise. Is there one specific thing that you anecdotally see as more often than not the issue, like maybe money sensitivity or something else? Or is it just like there's no clear cut data and there's no clear cut one main issue?
Hmm, that's good. Let me see. Is there one thing? So I think what I see often, there is definitely, because when you asked the question, the first thing that came to my mind was communication barriers. So I often see that there's a lack of communication with leadership and the team. There's not good communication with the team and with their prospects or their clients or in cross functionally. So a lot of times there are communication breakdowns, and it can be in all kind of different places. And that to mindset, because when we have communication barriers, oftentimes we're stuck in our own world. We're not stepping into the other person's world. And so that takes skill in order to realize, like, okay, what I'm doing is important, but it's not more important than Sally, or it's not more important than what my customer has to say. And kind of going back to what you mentioned about how I picked up the dyslexia thing, it's I'm fully present in this moment. I'm not thinking about anything else. My kids are out from school this week. I'm not thinking about anything else that's happening in my world. I am fully present. And so oftentimes when we have mindset issues, we're not fully present. Like our mind is thinking about all the things we have to do or what happened or the next thing on the list. So, and because of that, our communication is broken down.
I feel like this is a very powerful answer, Wesleyan. And I'm going to dive deeper. But before I do, I want to take a quick second to pause and say if this conversation is providing value to you, if you're learning something new and saying, hey, I can apply what Wesleyan is saying to get 1% better, then I'm going to ask you to do two things. Hit the subscribe button and share this episode with at least one person who needs to improve their sales ability or who needs help upskilling their team. Because what you're hearing from Wesleyan, you don't see this insight in a book unless you buy her book, which is not out yet, right? It's very hard to find an expert in this space to help educate you to take a 10-year growth journey and turn it into 1 year. So Wesleyan, I want to kind of take a step back and really understand what you mentioned. You mentioned something very powerful, the idea of being fully present. You mentioned the idea that there's a mindset issue. You mentioned the idea or the observation that there's a gap between leadership and the team. And previously, when you were giving us your background, you mentioned how you went from being like, correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe being a process failure, being very technical, to being very good at what you do, to transitioning to sell to people who are very technical, to understand their logic, to then transition to being a leader and then having a challenge. So, if you don't mind, help us understand the mindset issue looking at you today versus you then. What was the mindset issue that meant you were in a position of leadership but couldn't effectively lead the team? And how did you address it? Was it that you weren't fully present? Was it something else? Help us kind of unpack that with something tangible, if you don't mind.
So I was a top salesperson. I always crushed my numbers. I never was below 100%. Like I was always double digits blowing my number. And so because I was so amazing, I wanted everybody to be a mini Wesleyne. And so I went into leadership like, you guys have to sell just like I sold. You must do this thing. And then I would get into meetings with them and they would start talking and the customer would ask a question. I'm like, oh, no, it's this way. Oh, no, we should do that. And obviously, what was happening, I didn't even realize it. One, I was trying to put everybody in a box because I thought I knew best. And then I was not empowering them to use their voice, right? So that challenge that I find, and it's still so prevalent in leadership. And, my book is about sales, but I talk about leadership often. And especially in sales leadership, nobody teaches you how to be a manager across business functions, across business units. But when you promote your top sales rep into manager, it is very hard because a top salesperson is usually a selfish person. Because in order to be a top salesperson, you are focused on your number and your clients and your everything. And then you just say, I want you to have kumbaya moments with everybody on the team. It doesn't naturally translate, right? So that is one of the challenges that I had. And it's a challenge I see over and over and over again in organizations. Leaders only have that one linear way of thinking, and they want everybody to do things their way.
I feel like this is very powerful, Wesleyne, because I'm surrounded by high performing people. And it's a danger. When you're a high performing person, you kind of unintentionally assume everyone should work the way you work without saying everyone's strengths are different and everyone's potential to get the same end result. The pathway can be different. So help us understand how you educate leaders to learn this, because sometimes leaders, they're very good, which is how they got to positions of leadership. But it's like you don't know what you don't know. So how are you able to efficiently shine a spotlight without damaging someone's ego, etc., to just say, hey, maybe try this?
I really try to help leaders take a look in the mirror. And a lot of times when I'm on sessions with them, we're doing training or coaching, they're often complaining about the people on their team or their colleagues in another department. And so I asked them the question, what was your part in this? How did you try to change this? What impact did you have on the situation? And when I start asking them those self-reflective questions, they're like, wait, maybe I didn't, or, oh, well, I didn't do anything. And if they're making a bunch of excuses, I let them make their excuses and I say, those sound like excuses. And if we don't take ownership for our own part in any situation, then it's not going to get better. And I also often see that leaders will, if the rep is not performing, if they're not doing what they need to do, they blame the rep. And so I asked this one question that unlocks things every single time. Have you given them 100% of what they need to succeed? And they can't say yes because often they haven't given them the tools, they haven't coached them, they haven't directed them, they haven't done what they needed to do. So I really use a method of asking them questions to reflect on their own behavior, to reflect on how they show up so that they can have those aha moments. And it's really powerful when I'm doing this with leadership teams because they see it. And when you get somebody to realize, no, this is on me, they take ownership of it and they want to fix it versus me doing some kind of assessment battery and saying, oh, you're not good in communication and you're this, and that. They just get defensive. So that's the thing that I feel really unlocks leaders.
So if a leader wanted to do this, what is the most efficient way? Is it to get your book? Is it to reach out to you? Is it to use ChatGPT? What, in your opinion, is the most efficient way for somebody to learn this without feeling sold or without feeling pressure to act or anything like that?
I would say reach out to me. I have an open calendar link. So I offer a 30-minute unstuck session for leaders, for salespeople. You just come and you say, this is what I'm experiencing. And I say, okay. So we talk through one big issue. We go very deep and you leave with a framework on how to work through it. I would say that would be the best first step. Actually, that's the second step. The first step is realizing that you have a challenge or a problem that you need to fix. Because a lot of times leaders have the blinders on and they don't even see themselves. And so, yeah, I would say that's a good step.
And just to clarify for everyone listening, what we will do is we'll include a LinkedIn link to Wesleyne's profile. That way you can go to her profile and you can find the link to, it's probably in her featured section, to book that 30-minute session. That's going to be the most efficient way for you. And I like how Wesleyne kind of retracted a little bit to say that this is actually the second step. The first step is realizing you have a problem. So what I would say is just be curious and say maybe you don't have a problem, but you can be better. And Wesleyne can help you be better. Like no one has any problems. They're just room to scale. So Wesleyne, help us understand from your perspective, what is exactly the belief selling framework?
So, the belief selling framework is a framework that I really feel helps us unlock the things that are holding us back. So, belief is actually an acronym, and the first letter of belief stands for break barriers. So, the very first thing that we have to do before we can learn new skills, before we can do anything, is we have to break those barriers. And then we walk through the process. We embrace growth. Growth is uncomfortable, right? Growth is hard. It's scary. We don't want to do it, and then we focus on learning new skills. So it is actually the method that you should use to learn anything new in life. I've applied it to sales in my book because I think in sales, we're always rushing to the skills, and you will get a new cold call script and you do it right one time and you're like, I'm done. I'm out. I'm good. Right. And then you move on to the next thing, or you try something different. Oh, I had one LinkedIn post that went viral. I'm great. I don't need to try anything else. But the way that as adults we learn, we have to unlearn the bad. So that's what the B stands for, break barriers. Unlearn the bad, unlearn all the things that we have done in the past that haven't worked. And then the final part of that process, the F, stands for fueling others. You know that your cycle of learning is complete when you can teach someone something that you have learned and you see them implementing it. So that's what belief selling is all about.
I love it, Wesleyne. I think you said something very interesting about unlearn the bad. If possible, can you please, double tap that, zoom in a little bit further for me? Because we live in an age of like social media, in an age of instant gratification, in an age of everyone's right and everyone's wrong at the same time. So when you talk about sales, what do you think are bad sales habits that people need to unlearn?
We keep going back to this listening and talking thing. I think that a lot of times salespeople, they talk too much. They just talk too much. You just are on a call and you want to hear yourself talk. Like nobody cares about you. Like literally, I tell the sales, no one cares about you. They care about themselves. They care about their problems. They don't care about you. So learning how to listen, and not just listen to respond, but actively listen. Like I am listening to what you are saying, the small things that you say. I'm watching your nonverbal cues. I am fully present. So that's a big thing that we have to unlearn. And the instant gratification. So again, I work mostly with teams and organizations that have longer sales cycles. So a long sales cycle can be anything from 45 days to 24 months, depending on where you fall within that spectrum. And so it is very important that I not only teach the salespeople, but also leadership. Like, we're not always going to see fast, quick wins. It's better to nurture this relationship, nurture this, and get $200,000 and getting a quick $20,000, screw it up, and lose a customer for life. So, really understanding how we have to not be so instantly gratified. And I also think there are just some fundamental things that as sales people that we all carry. So that negative self-talk, you get rejected one time and you're like, I'm not good enough. This is too hard. I'm not cut out for sales. There are more losses than wins. Like if you're winning 100% of your business, you're not going after risky business and you're
Raise
doing it wrong.
prices.
Right? You raise your prices or you're doing it wrong. You're in your little safe comfort zone. Like, no, if I see close rates too high, I'm like, no, you're not doing something right. So we have to learn how to see a loss as a learning experience. I learned from this. This is what I did right. This is what I did wrong. And I move on to the next. So those are just a couple things that we have to unlearn in order to really step into a place where we can consistently hit metrics, consistently hit numbers, because everything that I talk about in my book is about consistency. It's not that I have one blowout month. It's that every single month I hit my quota. That is the goal. Every single month you need to hit whatever goals you set for yourself, whether you're a business owner or a salesperson. Like, that is the goal in sales.
And from your perspective, when you talk about goals and sales, is it like number of reaching out, number of following up? Is it, deals closed? What do you think are the metrics that salespeople need to track if their sales cycle is 45 days to 2 years, like you mentioned?
So I don't want to use two big words. So I'm going to break it
Please,
down. I'm
please
going to
break it down.
break
Fifth
it down.
grade
I'm going to
level.
use
Keep it
big
easy
words
for me.
and then I'm going to break it down. So when I think about metrics, I put them in two categories: leading and lagging indicators. And so a leading indicator is something that happens way before the sale is ever going to close. And lagging indicators are the things that happen at the end of that sales cycle. So the 45 days to 2 years. Leading indicators are all about inputs. It's all about what you're doing every single day, every single week, every single month. So things like phone calls, things like emails, meetings with people, those are all metrics that you want to define, and you have to decide what number of calls you need or you feel is necessary for you to close your business. Lagging indicators, those are, as I mentioned, revenue is the easiest lagging indicator. Percent of lead deals that have been closed, profitability. If you're in a distribution or if you're in different kind of business units, you're thinking about your profitability. So that's after everything has happened.
I love that. I love that, Wesleyne. Now, let's say you're like a solopreneur. You're that guy on like online who feels like I can do everything myself, etc. I don't need a team. That person is not your average client. That person probably invested a decent amount of time in self-growth, etc. Let's say they're listening to this podcast and they're looking at it saying, hey, they know they have gaps, etc., and they'll get to it when they get to it. What could that type of client or that type of avatar, that type of person, what could they do to scale more efficiently to then position themselves to build out a team and to understand the value of a team?
So one of the most important things that you can do as a solopreneur is get people to work with you now. I don't think that you can effectively scale a company alone. And sales is the last thing that you should give up as a solopreneur. You can give up your accounting, you can give up some of your operations, you can give up those things because there are documented processes that people can follow. Whereas sales, there's art and science. It is a lot harder to train a salesperson. It's a lot harder for you to get your return on investment from a salesperson. An accountant, they're keeping your books, they're sending out invoices, they're getting money, they're doing their job, right? So that's the very first thing that I think that solopreneurs should do. They need to really map out a plan and understand at what point can I outsource my accounting? At what point can I hire an internal operations person? At what point can I do this, right? And I like to say you have to have your revenue. And then you have to say, okay, when I make $200,000, I'm going to hire this person. When I make $300,000, I'm going to hire this person, and have that. So when you hit the mark, you hire the person. You don't just keep more money and do more things. So that's the very first thing that I think is most important, is understanding that if you want to scale your business, you will never do it alone. The next thing that they need to do is, as they're selling, they need to start documenting their sales process. What are your best practices? What are the questions that you're hearing oftentimes from your clients? We have so much AI now. Have your AI note taker in there if you're in person. Take your phone out and ask the person, is it okay if I record the call? This is just for my internal training purposes. Extract the questions that are being asked. What do you do when you have somebody who, after the first meeting, what steps do you take to then get the second meeting? Okay, how do you prepare a proposal? Like, start documenting those things, because if you have a process, it is so much easier to get a salesperson on board. And we talked about KPIs. What KPIs are most acceptable for you? If you're the founder and you're selling, you're doing all the things, you might say, I feel like a good KPI for me is 5 calls a week. But for a person doing this full time, it should be at least 3 or 4x that, right? So start building that out way before you need it. So when it is time to hire your sales team, you already have some backbones in place.
I love that, Wesleyne. And the reason I asked is because sometimes it just feels like some things are on trend, and then sometimes it feels like we're force fed a narrative, which I'm personally
Yeah.
not a fan of. And it feels like the narrative a couple of years ago was like, quit your job and follow your hobby. And now it feels like you're reacting, so you know. And now it feels like God's gift to mankind is being a solopreneur. So I
Mm,
wanted to understand from your perspective, diving a bit deeper, but continuing the same theme of my first question. Do you feel like solopreneurs have limiting beliefs or certain mental frameworks that are stopping them from efficiently hiring people and learning how to lead a team and scale their business, obviously?
absolutely. Think that, and I find there are two categories of solopreneurs because I'm a part of this organization. It's called Women Sales Experts. And so we are women in sales that we have our own business from all across the world. There are some people that are fine being solopreneurs. They don't want to scale their business. They're a little bit older in age. They're like, I don't want to manage a team. I don't want to do that. So they're good with what I call having a lifestyle business. You make a certain amount of money every year. You're good with that. You have your low number of clients. That's fine. But there are also other people who are solopreneurs and they want to scale. You must be honest with yourself. Do you want a lifestyle business? Do you not want to manage people? That's okay, but be honest with yourself. But if you want to scale and you want to grow, you have to realize that you are absolutely limiting yourself by doing everything alone. Like you cannot effectively be the accountant, be the consultant. You can't do it all by yourself. You must invest in getting some help. You must invest in getting some technology. If you're not using any kind of customer relationship management tool, you're not doing any kind of marketing on it, you're not doing anything, you're never going to scale and you're never going to grow. So that's the first thing. It's doing everything alone. The second thing is they don't want to spend money. And I think there's a right way to invest in your company and a wrong way. There, you mentioned people are like quitting their job and they want to do this. Like one of the things that really irritates me is all these people selling courses and all these coaches, and they're selling this for $5 or $10 or $20,000. And it's this one time you're a real estate investor. This one time I got this property and I made 100x on it. Like, bruh, the one time that you're using your one experience, just like me as a new leader, right? That is horrible. So I'm not saying invest in that way, but I am saying find a good quality business coach. Find somebody who can help you get on your journey. Find an outsourced marketing agency that understands your specific type of business. Like invest in those ways. Read a book, take a class, listen to podcasts. Like do something, like you say, grow 1%. Like ask yourself, how am I growing 1% today? Am I going to listen? I'm listening to this podcast today, so I'm growing 1% in this day. But what about tomorrow? Like actually find how you can invest your time and money in growing.
And the funny thing is, like, it doesn't cost a lot. That 20K course does not create more than 20K value in a lot of situations.
In
Because
most.
usually, with love and respect to everybody, usually it's by like a fake guru that doesn't actually have experience. You go to the comments section and they're saying, hey, I lost money by implementing these strategies. Not only did I pay for the course, but I implemented these strategies and lost money. It's like a double negative. So Wesleyne, I wanted to understand, right? You mentioned investing in help. You mentioned being strategic. In theory, if we were to chart my understanding of your life, for a lot of people slash myself, it might feel like it wasn't a very linear journey. It might feel like initially you're working in a job in like failure control, you'd become a manager of that. Then you'd become like director of that. Then you'd like grow that way. Instead, you did a pivot to sales, but you pivoted to sales of the same product of selling to those people that you once were, and then you scaled that way. And then you pivoted out to then start your own business. I want to focus on that part of your journey, right? I've done that. Some people who are, avid listeners of the podcast have transitioned from working for somebody to running their own business. It can be scary. It can feel like, is this the right time? It can
Yeah.
feel like, oh, I'll do this next year. And then next year comes and you're like, I really need to do this. Otherwise, I'm never going to exponentially grow. Help me understand how you were processing that part of your life, maybe 7 years ago, as I understood it.
Yeah. So for me, one of the things that I have always been fortunate to have is I've always been very good with money. My dad has a PhD in applied economics. So on the way to school, we would be talking about debt and money and investing. So that is one thing that I I had that I know a lot of people didn't have. So when I started my business, I was still working full time, but I set goals for myself. I set KPIs for myself. I said, I need to have at least X number of paying clients by this point. Within 6 months, I need to have replaced my full-time income in this business, period. And so I set goals for myself. And when I hit those goals, I was like, okay, now it's time for me to leave this job and go do this full time. Because if I'm doing this with a half of my brain, what can I do with the whole thing? So I do think that it is definitely a faith move. It is definitely something you're not going to see what is on the other side of you stepping out if you don't ever step out. And in my first full year in business, I crossed the 6-figure mark. I was like, wow, this is cool. And it was just head down, focus, focus, focus. So if you feel like you're still working a little bit full time and you're dibbling and you're dabbling, set goals. What do you need to accomplish financially? Because the financial piece is very important. Do not put your job on a wish and a prayer. Like, don't do that. That's not smart. Like, I never recommend anybody just quitting their job. I want to do this thing. And then you blow through your savings in 6 months. Don't do that. Like, have a plan. And when you hit those goals, move forward. And now once you're in entrepreneurship, there are ebbs and flows. I literally, the first full year in my business was 2020. Do we know what happened in 2020? The whole world blew up. So 3 months into me saying, this is going to be great. It's my first full year in business and I have all these plans. I literally lost 50% of my active clients and I had nobody in the pipeline. So very quickly, I had to
And you specialize in sales.
And I specialized in sales. Exactly. And I was a salesperson, and I knew how to sell. So I absolutely knew how to sell, but nobody was buying because we thought the world was coming to an end, right? And so I had to reimagine. So even what I started my business in 2018, it's very different today because of that pivot. Like, I had to go through that transition. 4 years ago, I went through a divorce. Like, I tell everybody, I've gone through COVID and a divorce and I'm still standing. I'm going to be here forever. Like, I'm going to stand forever and life will hit you. But if you have to have that mindset of every single day, I get on this computer and I do something sales focused. And if you have a sales focused mindset, you will always be filling your pipeline. You will always be closing business. So always say, I'm going to do one thing today that is sales focused. And if you keep that on the top of the mind, even when you have those slow patches, when money isn't flowing like you want it to, something's going to happen. It'll flow in.
Wesleyne. So I want to circle back to a couple things that you said. Before I do that, I recommend everyone maybe go back like a minute or two and re-listen to Wesleyne's answer because it provides a lot of value. So you said something that no one has ever said on this podcast to date. I'm very good with money. No one has said that. Literally, the podcast is called MyFinJourney. All we do is talk about money in theory in a very abstract, low pressure type way. No one has said that they're very good with money. No one has alluded to being very good at investing. No one has even dropped wisdom that, their dad specializes in economics. So when you think of yourself being very good at money, help us understand, from a young age or even now, what do you invest in? Why do you think that you're very good with money? Not because of like the family background and talking about it, but in terms of actual results or strategy or how it's enabled you to aggressively scale and lay that solid foundation.
Okay, so maybe I should reframe I'm very good at money.
No,
I'm not good. No. So investing is not an area I am not an investing pro. I don't really touch investments, put money in my retirement and that's it. I don't think about it. So for me, being good with money is more like day to day, right? I have a very low, if any, debt load. So I guess I am happy to break this down for people because I think it is very important. Personally, every single month I have a written budget. Right. And I live by that budget. I focus on my budget, not my bank account. So I live, breathe, die by that budget. I have separate accounts. I have a vacation fund. I have a home improvement fund. I have all the things. So when my washing machine broke, I just took the money out of there and it didn't feel like a lot. So I have a lot of discipline around money. I love going on vacation. That's what me and my kids do. But we also don't spend $500 on groceries every week, right? Like, we go to places that are more economical there. So I think for me personally, it's the checks and balances in terms of these are the things I really enjoy in life and these are the things I don't. If I don't have the money in my bank account, I don't buy it. So I don't use a lot of debt personally because I don't leverage debt. In my business, I use a method, you may be familiar with it. It's called Profit First. And so with Profit First, you have your different accounts for everything. And so you have like a profit account, you have an owner's compensation account, you have your operating expenses. And for me, I really focus on, if I want to make an investment in something, I look at my operating expenses and I'm like, no, this is the operating expense. I'm not going to do that. Versus, okay, this is something that I want to invest in. I can take some money out of my profit account because that is extra. So for me, having a good money mindset is focusing on, I don't make emotional purchases. I don't make emotional decisions. I use the data, I use the facts to help me get to the place that I am. And I'm a single mom. My kid's father gives $0 in child support. I run my own business. I have 5 employees and I've never missed a payroll. I've never missed a mortgage. I've never missed anything. And I've been doing this for a while. So I think for me, I have been able to separate my emotions from the facts and really focus on using money in the right way. So
I love that, Wesleyne, because it was a very powerful, detailed response that's very actionable for people. And I'm not going to reiterate how valuable it is. I'm just going to tell people the same advice I said for the last answer. Just go back 2 minutes and listen to it again, because it gives you a day to day framework that I personally don't follow, but a lot of people swear by it. Right. And if you want what I follow, DM me, message me, I'll tell you what I do. But you said something very powerful that I do want to double tap on, that you're not emotional about money. Now, in theory, you're in sales. In theory, sales is all about like pitching the emotion, creating FOMO, like really uncovering the fear, the anxiety, not the excitement and hope, but fear and anxiety to make people act in theory. So, how do you understand that conversation of sales versus product?
sales versus product. Give me a little bit more. Tell me specifically
Sure,
what you mean.
sure. Like this the story of the snake oil salesman, or I can sell ice to an Eskimo. Like,
Yeah.
help me understand what's more important, or how do you understand the conversation of sales versus product, in the sense that I should have the best product and product-led growth, or I should develop a good sales team and have them understand how our product solves their problem and then sell to the right people, versus I'm just going to shove the product down people's throat and they will buy. So help me God.
I think it's, so I'm going to answer from my realm of expertise. I do think that it's
Please.
different in different areas, because if you're selling something that's $10 a widget, it's going to be a very different sale than something that's $1,000, right? So what I will say is, I believe in customer centric, problem focused selling. And so that means I step into the customer's world and I am focused on the problems that they're having. My product, my service is at the back of my mind, at the back of my forefront. So even in that first discovery meeting, we should not be having slides. We shouldn't even be talking about our company that much or the product that much. We are stepping into that person's world and we are understanding what the challenges they're having. And the really hard part about selling this way, sometimes the problems they're having today, your product, your solution can't fix it, but you know somebody who can. And if you make that recommendation, you have a customer for life, because you have helped them with what is going on with them today. So it is definitely, for me, it is less about the product and it is all about the problem that your prospect, your customer is having. And I think that one of the key things that we have to think about is, if I'm only leading with my product, then they're going to go to another person who leads with product and it's going to become a price game. And so you win on price, you lose on price. You win on features, you lose on features. But what is harder to lose against is somebody who steps into your world and really, really understands you.
That was so deep that I'm just going to repeat it in my own words. The most powerful thing in sales, and I would argue in life, is building a relationship, actually seeing and hearing the person, understanding their problems, and understanding how they look at life, versus just trying to be selfish, like we touched on earlier, and just trying to sell more. And I think that while that is the most powerful part of the answer, in my opinion, Wesleyne, the most powerful part of the past two answers is how you structured it. And you said, hey, Mustafa, your question is not good enough. I need to separate day to day investing, or day to day finances versus investing. I need to separate a $10 product versus a $5,000, $10,000, $100,000 product. And I think that's very powerful for us all, in the sense that life isn't 0 or 100. It's not 0 to 1. It's not either or. There's a lot of gray area. So, Wesleyne, as we've had this conversation, I really loved it, because you've reminded us that sales isn't just about chasing people, It's about creating beliefs. Wesleyne, if somebody wanted to continue the conversation with you, remind us, what's the most efficient way to get in contact with you?
So I would say LinkedIn is the best way to get in contact with me. And we've talked about my book a lot. So you can go to yoursalesreset.com and pre-order a copy of your book. And this is literally Wesleyne in a book. So you'll get so much from reading these pages.
I love it. I love it. Wesleyne, I really loved how you analyzed strategy. I really loved how you helped explain to us what's right and how we can scale, and maybe what's wrong and how we can get helped to pivot and grow more efficiently. If you've been listening to this conversation and it's made you rethink how to lead or how to sell, share it with one person who needs to hear it. Help your friends scale. Hit the subscribe button, not for me, not for you, but for us. Ultimately, MyFinJourney is a family. We're looking to help you learn and grow, and we're also happy to get your feedback on how to be more efficient, because every week we bring you voices like Wesleyne's that add value for you in a way that maybe you weren't aware. They shine a light to a corner of your brain that maybe needed a bit of love, a little bit of attention. Ultimately, your team, just like you, aren't broken. Your strategy isn't failing. It's just that it needs a little bit of love, a little bit of attention, a little bit of food for thought. So we look forward to seeing you in the next episode.